my rundown of the 2025 Australian Grand Prix. Welcome back to Henley F1. I'm your host Matt, and thank you very much for tuning back into another video where the dust has now settled on what was a rather thrilling and up and down first weekend of Formula One, and it's time for me to see how I got on against my first ever set of predictions and just chat through how I think the weekend went. It was a bit damp, a little bit unexpected, but what a start to the 2025 campaign. Being honest, the predictions I set out a couple of days before have all seemed to go out the window, but there were some nice surprises thrown into the mix as well, so let's get into the rundown. First of all was my in the bin, and I called this as Kimi Antonelli. Well, I thought I was in for a winner here, if I'm honest, after he qualified, but post-race, I was way off with this one. Kimi had a shocker in qualifying, coming in 16th place, but what a difference in the race conditions. He had a great recovery race, spin there in the middle, struggled a little bit in the conditions to get things together, and he threw away a few places, but recovered really well, which was the important thing. He finished P4 after the early release penalty he got was rescinded, which was great news, and maybe the context of this race, with a lot of other things happening around him, helped him settle quickly. There was a lot going on, so maybe the focus was taken away a little bit, and which relieved some of the pressure. But overall, great job, and really looking forward to seeing more of him as the season goes on. My out of nowhere was Ollie Bearman. Now, out of nowhere is supposed to be a good way to start things off here, but gotta be honest, he had a difficult weekend, not making it through quali after the crash. So obviously starting from last place and effectively finishing in last place in the race. Did we have 60 DNF, so 14th place, I think. Might be wrong with that one, which to be honest is, not where I expected him to be, but starting at the back of the pack and the conditions, at least he finished where he started, but hopefully some more from Ollie over the next couple of weeks. My first back in the bar was Jack Doohan, and I am absolutely taking this one. As Hajar crashed out on the formation lap, he was the second rookie down within 5 turns, and it was just an absolutely crazy way to start the Grand Prix, but I could see this one coming a mile off, to be honest. I think he's got his work cut out to keep the seat this year, and in all fairness, the conditions weren't great, but he is a seasoned driver, and he should be used to being able to drive in these conditions, but I think all the rookies struggled. But I just had a feeling about Jack Doohan not making it through this weekend. His character shone through on some of the videos and things and some of the media attention this weekend, which was great. Don't want to see any driver fail, of course, but I hope things can improve for him. But down back in the bar first for me this weekend, Jack Doohan. Then there were my qualifying predictions. My front two rows originally were Lando and Charles, with Mac and Oscar. I got 3 of them right, which was good news. Lando and Oscar finished P1 and P2. I should have backed myself there, being a McLaren fan, and stuck with Lando and Oscar to take the front row. Great to see Lando take that P1, which is what I was really hoping for. Max, I had him in 3rd place, so excellent. But in place of Charles in that top 4 was George, which was a cracking effort from the Mercedes. I kind of written them off a little bit, to be honest with you. But George, Mr. Consistent, Mr. Saturday, pulls it out of the bag. And Charles, what can I say, down in 7th place behind a V-Carboner Williams, which was unexpected from my point this weekend. But see how things move on. Next is my over-the-line top 5 predictions. So for this, I had Lando with Oscar in 2nd, Charles, George, and then Lewis. So quite an out-and-out one, back in the Ferraris there over anyone else in the middle. And I think I was 3 off on this one. So Lando followed by Max 1 and 2. Then it was George and Kimi, and then Alex bringing in 5th place. So what can I say there? Lando, fantastic result, finishing in P1 exactly as we had him there. Max, phenomenal drive. Again, I'll talk a bit more about the drivers in a minute, specific examples, but cracking effort. George, brilliant, held on to that top 3, phenomenal stuff in the Merc there. And Kimi coming up into 4th, brilliant weekend for Mercedes overall. And as I sort of predicted a little bit, didn't call it for the race, but Williams up there in P5. Phenomenal from Alex Albon. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. So great job. Charles obviously finished 8th, Oscar 9th, and Lewis in P10 from my original prediction as well. Okay, now on to the rest of the race, and let's start with Hajar. Didn't even make it around the formation lap, and I feel a bit sorry for him, but you can hear at the time how much he gave he gave a bit too much on the throttle as he was straightening the car back up out of the corner, which is disappointing, and he should have gotten to grips with these kind of things a little bit more by now. I know he's a rookie, he's going to find his feet with this, but it is really disappointing to see that happen. It was lovely to see Lewis's dad consoling him, although I'll be honest, F1 is a ruthless world. We'll see how that plays out, but he must be absolutely gutted, his lifelong dream, and then just to bin it straight away on the formation lap is not a nice thing to do. A little bit embarrassing, I think, but hopefully he'll bounce back. He had a cracking qualifying, which was really positive. P11, which is amazing stuff, and I'm hoping we can see a bit more in future races. Hopefully that is the nerves out the window. We can put it behind him and see how he bounces back. Next is Carlos. I was expecting a lot from Carlos. Carlos is my man on a mission this year, as a random phrase I pulled out of the bag, but his spin was really strange. He said he had a torque surge on the radio, which is a sudden deployment of more torque or power than you expect. So a bit of an odd one, and so I'm feeling for him a bit there. Whether that's a car or driver issue, I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that. And I think he was in for a blinder of a race, and he's going to bounce back from this one. It sucks a little bit that he finished up where he did, but, really positive throughout the rest of the weekend, and going into China, he's going to be definitely one to watch for me. Okay, on to the current world champion, Max Verstappen. What an absolutely fantastic race in these conditions. We know Max chews up the wet race conditions, and it was phenomenal, to be honest with you. The whole race, brilliant start, put himself back up into P2 and held it all the way from there. So little run off, I think, lap 17, recovered really well. This is Max, he knows how to deal with these things. I've already mentioned it a few times, this is absolutely talent over car for me this year, and boy did he show what he can do with that talent, with the car he's got underneath his feet. Quality right the way through. The battles were good. It was good to see him pulling back against the McLarens at the end. I don't know if that was a McLaren drop-off or when Max was just giving it a bit more, but it's going to be really interesting if he can keep that up throughout the rest of the season. Really awesome stuff. Next on to Fernando Alonso. A little disappointing. Lap 34, I think, was when he binned it into the wall. The Astons are going to be somewhere between that mid and low end this year. As I said before, I think Adrian Newey's probably more working on the car for next season, so it'll be interesting to see how they get on for this year. But it was really disappointing to see, a driver of Alonso's caliber spin out and crash. I think it was at turn 6. There's no grace here with the narrow walls, and really disappointing to see. On to Liam Lawson now. It was never going to start well from Liam, having to roll out of the pits due to the wing issue he had, but nevertheless, crashing out on your Red Bull debut is not a good start to your Red Bull career. I'm not waging into this whole Yuki, even bringing Danny Ricciardo, Liam Lawson argument just yet. Maybe I'll do another video on that at some point. But this is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. He's got to get a good run of form quickly. That has not started well. Sergio Perez is going to be dancing down the streets of Mexico City if Liam carries on driving like this. As it just validates everything he was saying about how much this is a difficult car to drive. Red Bull, I think, are going to have some tough decisions. Since Daniel left the team so long ago, the Red Bull setup, they've really struggled with getting that other driver locked in. And is it time to make those adjustments to make sure that now Max has slipped down the grid a little bit, that they can get two cars consistently in that top sort of 6, even top 8 position to keep the points coming in the constructors? Or do they put all their eggs into the Max basket and carry on where they are? Who knows? We'll see what happens. Over to Oscar. He was having a great race, I think. Lap 44, absolutely gutting for me as a McLaren fan. The spin to pop it onto the, I was going to say gravel then, but it wasn't gravel. He managed to beach it on the grass somehow. But what a phenomenal job to dig it out of there. Pulling himself back to P9, getting back ahead of Hamilton near the end, really does show the true sort of caliber of the McLaren car for this season. So, which is why I think it's going to be a bit of a walk away if the two drivers can keep it together. It's a shame it ended up this way. The look on Lando Norris's mum's face said it all, really. But those last 3 laps to get around Pierre, Lewis, absolutely phenomenal just to get a couple of points on the board. Showing his capability, showing the car's capability really importantly against the other cars at that point in time. And it was just a shame he wasn't in the mixer really for the battle with Max and Lando at the end. Straight onto the McLarens. I've already mentioned it in one of my earlier videos, but I think regardless of what McLaren say and put out there, Lando is going to be their number 1 driver for this year. And it came across that way in the race. I'm not sure if it was a media spin, the way that or some clever editing, the way that the radio comms were coming out, because I've heard a few things online, or videos surface online that say otherwise, but stopping them racing each other, for me, that's going to lead to some problems further down the line, unless it's been made clear to Oscar that Lando is their kind of primary focus. It'd be really interesting to see what happens with that. It goes on. I'm going to grab myself a big bucket of popcorn. I'm going to sit back, and a bit of me is really hoping Lando has a good year, McLaren's have a great year, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this one plays out as things move on. Ferraris, really interesting race. Lap 47, Lewis and Charles on the hard tyre, with Yuki, Liam and Esteban on the mediums. Rest of the grid were on inters, showed a bit of a difference there. There was a few crashes after this. Lawson, Bortoletto putting it in the bin, but this just didn't do him any favours. Pitting on 48 under the SC, then left him in 9th and 10th, and it was pretty much game over from there. George said, I think Mercedes are well ahead of the Ferraris from this race with the pace that they had there. But I think, again, a few decisions, a bit of arguing on the radio. That's not a great start for the year for them. Lewis has got to get used to working with a new engineer, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. So a few other special mentions. Nico Hulkenberg, phenomenal stuff to get the big green garden shed around into P7. It's a great start for the Kick Sauber team. Some good points on the board for them. I think I read that's more points scored here than the entire of last season collectively, which is probably right based on where Bottas and Zhou were finishing most of the race. So phenomenal stuff from Nico. He is a great driver in these conditions. Lance Stroll, P6. I did not expect that. He kind of just snuck in there. He did so well to keep that Aston so far up the grid, and with Alonso spinning out, there's some great points to them off the bat as well to get going. Alex Albon, P5. I've already mentioned I expected Williams to be right up there as well, but what a great start from Alex Albon. I was just really wishing the Carlos was still on track to be up there with him, to be honest. It would have been a cracking weekend for Williams. Seeing them right at the top of the constructors, getting 2 cars right up there would have been amazing stuff. Onto my driver of the day, and it can only be one, to be honest. That's Lando Norris. Absolutely solid from start to finish. What do we have? Pole, win, fastest lap, voted driver of the day by the F1 community as well. I actually expected this. I was hoping for this, and as a Lando and a McLaren fan, it all came together. So over the moon with the first win. It's great to see that they're off the board there. Usual kind of thing. It's not. I hope too much pressure doesn't get put on his shoulders, and he can keep things consistent throughout the year and bring it home for McLaren and himself this season as well. Just over to my final thoughts then. Overall, a great start to the 2025 campaign. There was bits of the race where we could have had a little nap, and then other bits where you had to be on the edge of your seat trying to keep up with everything that was going on. But clearly there's going to be some exciting battles this season. I know the weather played a part in this. I remember hearing something on one of my favourite YouTube channels, podcasts, and one of the reasons why I want to start this P1 along the lines of, should we get the hoses out in every race, because it does make things way more exciting in F1. But that rain certainly played a part this weekend, and it was great. It's so good to see so many different teams and drivers in the battle, different drivers finishing way up the grid from where we expected. It was great stuff. And ahead of this weekend in the Chinese Grand Prix, I will be sharing my thoughts. I'll put a video out exactly the same as last week with my predictions and a few bits and pieces, a little bit of goss on the news that is going on in the week as well. So please remember to follow along for this journey. Give this video a like, comment on what your favourite and most memorable moments from the Grand Prix were, and please ensure you're subscribed so you can keep up with more videos like this in the future. Happy racing, F1 fans.